Hello again and welcome to Eye on Opticom, a podcast from Global Traffic Technologies that brings you insightful conversations from around the law enforcement, public safety, and transit industries. Our guest on today's podcast is Dr. Richard B. Gasaway, the founder of the firefighting consulting company Situational Awareness Matters, and one of the nation's leading authorities on human error, situational awareness, and high-risk decision-making processes. His work has been chronicled in more than 450 books, book chapters, journals, and website articles, and he has delivered more than 4,000 presentations to more than 89,000 first responders, business leaders, industrial workers, medical providers, utility workers, and military personnel worldwide. He served more than 3 decades in fire, EMS, rescue, and emergency management as a firefighter, EMT-paramedic, lieutenant, captain, assistant chief, and fire chief in 6 emergency service organizations in West Virginia, Ohio, and Minnesota. Dr. Gasaway, thank you for joining us today.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be on your show and to share some perspective on situational awareness and to talk about Opticom.
So, first question would be, what made you decide to pursue this mission?
The start of it really wasn't as it was intended. I wish I'd had a clear focus at the time, but I didn't really know that I was heading down the route of situational awareness. What I realized in looking at first responder near misses and casualties is there was a lot of really smart, talented, experienced people seemingly not being able to see the bad things coming in time to prevent bad outcomes. And I was frustrated by this, and I thought there must be something missing in our training and preparation to be decision makers on emergency scenes. And I enrolled in a PhD program and did my research in cognitive neuroscience, trying to understand how the brain works toward how to improve situational awareness and high-risk decision making. And I didn't know what I was going to uncover or discover or what value it was going to bring to the fire service until I was completed. And then it just kind of launched a mission that has given me so many opportunities to present this topic to first responders all around the world. I'm truly humbled, and it's just completely amazing to me that it has turned out to be as well as it has.
What was the most interesting or illuminating things that you uncovered in the process of your research?
The most interesting thing to me was how many different ways situational awareness can go off the rails. The things that impact situational awareness I call barriers that flaw awareness. And when I started doing my research, I thought, well, how many barriers could there be? 10, 15, maybe 20? Well, there ended up being over 100 barriers that flaw situational awareness. And fortunately for first responders, not all of those 100 are in play for the work that responders do. Different barriers are in play for different people that work in different professions and different environments. But I was just stunned at how many different ways it can go wrong. And then as I looked at it and realized how many different ways it had gone wrong for me, but I didn't even realize it. You know, there's a saying like, you don't know what you don't know. I didn't know what I didn't know about how situational awareness is developed and maintained and how it's impacted and how to recover once it has been impacted and how it influences decision making. It was really a somber journey for me because here I was 25 years into my career thinking, man, I must really be good at this command stuff. I haven't gotten anybody hurt or killed under my command. And then I started learning all this stuff and I realized, yeah, I'm not really been all that good. I've just had a whole lot of lucky happen for me. And that was really eye-opening and sobering for me to have that epiphany, that far into my career.
Before we go any further in the conversation, let's define situational awareness and also why is it so important in emergency response?
Yeah, okay, let's start with the definition. Situational awareness is a person's ability to perceive and to understand what is happening in the environment around them. And perception and understanding are two very different components of situational awareness. The perception is the paying attention part. And when you talk with people about situational awareness, they usually don't get past that first part of perception. They're like, well, it means pay attention or keep your head on a swivel or watch your six. And that's all important, but it's all just part of that first component of perception. You have to take what you perceive. I use the analogy of jigsaw puzzle pieces. What you perceive are all different jigsaw puzzle pieces from your five senses. And then you have to take those jigsaw puzzle pieces and put them together in a way that they make sense. And that's the second part of situational awareness. And that's the understanding, the sense making part of it. And sometimes what we're trying to piece together doesn't make sense. Sometimes it makes sense based on past experiences. Sometimes it doesn't. But those are the first two parts. And then the third and final part, which is probably the most complex, but I would argue to be the most beneficial part of situational awareness, is being able to predict future events in time to prevent bad outcomes. So being able to take what you perceive, convert it into what you understand, and then use that understanding to make predictions about what's going to happen next. And how far you're out into the future you look to make your predictions depends on how quickly the environment or the circumstances are changing. Sometimes that look into the future might be 10 seconds. Sometimes it might be a minute. Sometimes it might be 10 minutes. Sometimes it might be an hour, depending on, in certain business decision situations that look into the future might be months. So it really depends on the environment in which the decisions are being made. The reason it's so important is situational awareness is the foundation for good decision making. Now, if you think about it logically, it makes complete sense that the better you understand a situation, the better your decision making will be. But there's a weird thing about situational awareness, and that is you can have terrible situational awareness, horrible situational awareness, you zero situational awareness, and still make a great decision. And we call that lucky. And out there in the world, there are a lot of responders that are lucking their way into successful outcomes. In fact, some have lucked their way into success so much, they now think that's a skill set. They underestimate the value of situational awareness, as strong situational awareness is the foundation piece for making good, solid, not luck-based decisions. And so that's really what the important part of it is it just kind of programs out some of the luck and replaces it with a skill set.
You have a successful consulting business now. What kinds of things do you try to impart upon firefighters when you visit fire stations around the country?
There are a lot of responders out there that think they have a greater understanding of situational awareness than what they actually do. In so many ways in our industry, situational awareness is used kind of as a buzzword. Like before training evolution, some of the instructor might say, well, we're going to be doing some high risk stuff here. So remember, situational awareness is important. Or remember, keep your head on a swivel. And all the heads might nod. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I will. But they don't really know what that means or how to do it. And therefore, this term is just has such a vague understanding. That's one important component, is just to take the mystery out of it, and really just like as I gave you that definition, when I'm teaching a full day class, those three component parts, perception, understanding, and prediction, it takes me almost a half a day just to explain how those three component parts form and then how they integrate with each other. So it's a lot more to it than it appears on the surface. So the first hurdle is getting folks beyond thinking it's such a simple concept, because it really isn't. And then helping them to understand all the ways that it can go wrong. I told you there's over 100 barriers. When I do a full day program for first responders, I focus on about a dozen. I call them the dirty dozen situational awareness barriers. And I talk about how those dozen barriers can impact them. And I do some demonstrations to allow them to experience these barriers, like in real time, right there in the program. And I can just see the eyes open wide, because some of those people were thought, well, this stuff you're talking about, Rich, it might happen to someone else, but it wouldn't happen to me. So for example, like I'll tell them how under certain conditions they might hallucinate. And as they hallucinate, they're actually in their mind creating a reality that doesn't really exist except in their mind. In other words, it's not true reality. It's not what's happening in the incident scene, but it's what they believe is happening in their mind because they're hallucinating. And I can just see it happen. They look at me like I have lobsters crawling out of my ears, reference to the Christmas Story movie. And then I'll do a demonstration where I'll bring somebody to the front of the room and I'll make them hallucinate. And when that happens, everybody in the room, you just see the jaws drop, like, that person he just did that with is a really smart, experienced, kind of person that you couldn't fool. Well, I'm not fooling them. Their brain is fooling them. and we all have vulnerabilities because we're human. And just getting them over the hurdle of disbelief of the things that can happen and to the belief that it can and will and has happened to them, and then giving them some tips and pointers and best practices about how to maneuver through that if and when it happens to them.
After you've sort of opened their eyes up to the very real dangers and kind of made them realize that, hey, maybe I'm not as aware as I thought I was of this concept, what kind of feedback do you get after these sessions are over, and what's sort of most rewarding for you to hear?
Hands down, the most rewarding thing that I can hear is to have a firefighter that comes up to me at the end of the program who's been in the business for 30 or 40 or 50 years and say to me, where has this message been for my whole time in the fire service? No one has ever taught me this stuff. And these are people that by self-admittance will say, I go to all kinds of classes. I go to all kinds of conferences. I read all kinds of journals, and I've never experienced or learned what I learned here today. And that is very pleasing for me, disappointing a little bit too, but pleasing for me to know that I can introduce somebody that's been around so long to a new concept that they see so much value in. The second thing maybe that is just behind that, for what gives me a great pleasure, is when I have folks who have military backgrounds in my programs who will then come up and share with me after the program the feedback that in the military they said, they'll come to me and say, I didn't know if I was really going to learn much today because, I've been in the military for 20 years and they just pounded situational awareness into us constantly. Everything was situational awareness and keep your head on a swivel and watch your six. And then they'll say to me, I don't know anything about situational awareness. I thought I did till I sat through this program, and oh my God, I cannot believe what I didn't know that I now know. And coming from folks who have a military background, who've had believingly so much exposure to this message, I just think that the people that are teaching it don't quite understand it to the level that they need to. And I understand they got a lot of stuff to teach. This is just one component piece of what they're there to be taught. So I fully understand them not being able to dive deep into it and explain it the way that I can. I mean, imagine in a I don't know, basic firefighter training class, they might talk about situational awareness for 5 or 10 minutes and think they've covered it all. Well, I can't cover it all in a day. If somebody said, well, I want to learn everything you know about situational awareness, I want to learn it all, how long would that take? Probably about a week. and people are stunned to think that there's that much to it, but there is that much to it.
Yeah, it sounds like the training that most of these military and firefighters are getting are just the tip of the iceberg.
It is. It really is. And again, I don't fault the trainers. Unless the trainer's been trained to do that deep dive on that particular topic, they're not going to. And in fact, I'd prefer they not, because if you train on this topic and you get it wrong, you can actually do more harm to somebody than you can good. So the fact that they don't dive deep into it and just cover it kind of as a fringe topic, at least they're introducing them to how important it is. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be able to have any tangible tools to be able to apply when they're, literally in a high stress, high consequence environment.
You were a longtime fire chief in several cities, including a decade in charge in Roseville, Minnesota. Did you have much experience with Opticom emergency vehicle preemption, and what did you think of it in your experience?
Yeah, so when I came to Roseville, I came from a department in Ohio that did not have Opticom, and we had several intersection accidents in Ohio, both with fire and police in our community. When I came to Roseville, the Opticom was already installed. Give people perspective. Roseville is a first-ring suburb of Minneapolis and St. Paul, with a sleep-in population of about 36,000 and a daytime population that probably gets close to 100,000, because there's a lot of businesses located in Roseville. Not a lot of heavy industry, but a lot of commercial businesses, and so we get a lot of traffic in the city. We already had Opticom installed, and so that was kind of like my first introduction into it. I didn't know how it worked or how effective it would be for me. I mean, the department was already familiar with it, and I was really impressed, really impressed with how much more ease it was and peace of mind it was for me when I was approaching intersections, to know that the opposing traffic had red lights, to be able to see that I had a green light. But even probably more impressive to me was how the Opticom helps to clear the intersection of traffic that's going in the same direction that I am. Previously, if I were coming up on a red light, and the traffic in my, say there was 3 lanes going the same direction I am, and it was in the traffic light was red, these people don't know what to do. They either sit there, or they try to part the sea, or they ease their way out into the intersection. In fact, I just had this happen to me in Florida. I was presenting at a conference in November, and I was sitting at a traffic light. We were like 8 deep at this traffic light. And out of a side street came an ambulance onto our street with its lights and sirens on, and nobody knew what to do. And there really wasn't, because of the build-up medians on the center line and some street poles and things on the right side, there was no place for anybody to go. Now, I give some credit to the ambulance operator that while they left their lights on, they just turned their siren off. So they probably reduced the stress of everybody that was waiting in that line, and let the traffic light turn green. But that was, I don't know, it's at least 2 minutes of time that ambulance was not transversing either toward its emergency or toward the hospital, because it had to sit through this change of the cycle of the traffic light. And it funny you would bring this up, because it really, at the moment, I was sitting there thinking, wow, this city could really benefit from Opticom, and because this wouldn't have happened. This intersection, the light would have turned green, traffic would have cleared this intersection, and that ambulance would have been on its way. And it was really nerve-wracking to see some of the people in the front of this line easing their way out into the intersection, because coming the other direction were 3 lanes of traffic, at like 45, 50 miles an hour, coming across in the crossways. And these people are easing their way out into their lanes of oncoming traffic, because they didn't know what to do. They didn't know how to clear out of the way for they wanted to, but they didn't know how to. And that's really when I think back on my experience with Opticom, it was just the value it created with improving safety and efficiency in the response was night and day. And I mean, I came from a city that didn't have it to a city that did have it, and it was just phenomenal.
Yeah, you usually don't know how much you miss it until you don't have it, or until you've had it. And then
I didn't even know I was missing it because I didn't have it. And then I had it and I'm like, geez, where was this?
Where has this been all my life? Yeah. Where can people go, Dr. Gasaway, if they want to learn more or book you for a speaking engagement?
Yeah, thanks for asking. It's a very simple way to find me. You just go to SA, the letter S, the letter A, which stands for Situational Awareness, samatters.com. And on the samatters.com website, they'll see a contact me tab, but they'll also see that there are 400 plus blog articles on there that are all free for them to read and use and share. And I have a podcast, so there's access to podcast episodes on there. So there's not just a way to contact me, but there's also a lot of access to free resources there for them if anybody is inspired to want to learn more about the topic.
Well, Dr. Gasaway, we know how busy you are, so we'll end it on that note. But we appreciate you taking some time to answer our questions today. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me. I had a lot of fun talking with you. I wish we had more time. I could probably just talk off both of your ears.
Yeah, apparently days worth of content. So
thank you.
That was Dr. Richard Gasaway speaking about the importance of situational awareness and his experience as a fire chief using Opticom Priority Control. Thanks for downloading today's episode. To hear past episodes of this podcast, please visit our website at gtt.com or search for Eye on Opticom on your favorite podcast platform. Until next time, I'm Bill Hupp, and this has been Eye on Opticom.